All right. So today we are going like deep into the world of This American Life.
Yeah, This American Life, huh?
I think a lot of our listeners are probably big fans.
Big fans.
And are really eager to kind of uncover, what makes the show tick.
Right.
So we're going to peel back the layers on this one.
Yeah.
And see how it became like a cultural touchstone,
It really is.
For storytelling and just for like audio in general. It's not your like typical, news radio show.
No, at all.
It's about finding those extraordinary moments hidden in like the everyday lives of ordinary people.
Right.
So we'll trace its path, from its very humble beginnings.
Very humble beginnings.
All the way to becoming this like podcasting powerhouse.
It really is a powerhouse.
And I think you'll be surprised by some of the things that we uncover along the way.
I think so too. Yeah.
I know. When I was doing the research for this.
Yeah.
What always struck me is how This American Life really like snuck up on everyone.
It did.
And it wasn't an overnight success story.
No, it was this like quirky little experiment on WBEZ in Chicago back in 1995.
Right.
And like it almost didn't make it, It had a rocky start.
I read about that too.
Yeah.
Originally called like Your Radio Playhouse.
Your Radio Playhouse, yeah.
It was like the brainchild of Ira Glass, right?
Right, Ira Glass.
Who wanted to create something, more intimate.
Yes.
More cinematic than traditional radio.
More cinematic.
Do you think he like always had that knack for storytelling?
I mean, well, Ira
Or did that develop over time?
He was already, a seasoned public radio producer at that point.
Right.
But he was looking for this like new way to connect with listeners.
Yeah.
He wanted to tell stories that felt really personal.
Yeah.
Like you were eavesdropping on a conversation.
I love that.
Between friends.
Yeah.
And that's what makes This American Life so unique, right?
Yeah.
It's not about breaking news.
Right.
It's about finding the extraordinary in the very ordinary.
Exactly.
And I think that's what really drew people in.
Yeah, and they quickly rebranded as This American Life.
They did.
Which seems so fitting given their goal of like capturing this tapestry of American life.
Right.
The whole tapestry.
That first episode, New Beginnings.
The beginnings, yeah.
Really kind of sets the stage.
It does.
There's a story about a man who becomes a car salesman
I remember that one.
after failing as a poet.
Yes.
It's almost like a metaphor for the show's own journey, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Right,
It's like this kind of like roundabout way of getting to where you're going.
Right.
You
don't always take the straight path.
Yeah, you don't always take the straight path.
And that's one of the things that I think makes This American Life so compelling.
Yeah.
They take these like seemingly simple stories.
Right.
And they weave them into something profound,
It's like they're holding up this mirror to our own lives.
I love that, yeah.
Helping us to see like the beauty and the heartbreak.
The beauty and the heartbreak.
In like the everyday.
In the everyday.
Okay, so let's unpack This American Life formula a little bit.
Okay.
So we know each episode has a theme.
Right.
And it's broken down into acts like a play.
Like a play.
And they often will mix stories from staff producers with like contributions from freelancers.
Right.
But what really makes it stand out?
Well, for me, it's the way that they find the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Right. Yeah.
Like take the episode about the lost wallet, for example.
Okay.
On the surface, it's just a story about a guy who loses his wallet.
Okay.
But it becomes so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's a meditation on trust, on the kindness of strangers.
Right.
And on the things we value most.
Okay. I like that.
It's really about what matters to us.
It's like they take something that we can all relate to.
We can all relate to.
Like, we've all lost something.
Lost something.
Lost a wallet, lost keys.
I've lost my keys before.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they use it as this springboard to explore like these deeper themes about human nature.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so resonant.
And then there's the sound design.
Oh, the sound is...
It's so immersive. You've got the music, the ambient noises, like the voices of the people that they're interviewing.
Right.
All blended together to create this experience that feels almost cinematic.
Yeah, it's like they're painting a picture with sound.
Exactly.
They really are masters of it.
They've even worked with musicians like Stephen Merritt, right?
They have, yeah.
To like create original scores for some of their episodes.
That's right.
I mean,
it's really remarkable what they do with sound.
It's so effective. It really makes these stories even more powerful, don't you think?
I think so, yeah.
And then there's Ira Glass himself.
Oh, Ira.
That conversational style.
Oh.
His asides, his self-deprecating humor.
He's so funny.
It's all so disarming, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
He doesn't sound like this traditional radio host at all.
No, not at all.
He sounds like a friend telling you a story.
That's a good way to put it.
Do you think that makes him more relatable?
I think it does, yeah.
What do you think it is about his delivery that draws listeners in?
Well, I think it's his authenticity.
Okay.
You know, he doesn't shy away from being vulnerable,
Right.
from admitting when he's confused or uncertain, and he's not afraid to laugh at himself.
Okay.
It makes him feel real human.
I like that.
And I think that's what resonates with listeners.
Right.
They feel like they're in on the joke, like
Yeah.
they're part of the conversation.
And it creates this like intimacy, right?
It does, yeah.
It's like you're sitting around like a campfire listening to a story.
That's a perfect analogy.
And that kind of leads us to another key element of this American life formula,
Okay.
which is emotional honesty.
Emotional honesty, yeah.
They don't shy away from those raw, unfiltered moments, do they?
They don't.
You know what I mean?
No, they embrace them.
Right,
They
yeah.
let their interviewees be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they embrace the silences, the pauses.
Right.
You know those moments where you can almost hear the person thinking?
Yeah.
It makes the stories feel more real,
More real.
more relatable.
You really feel like you're experiencing these stories
You do.
alongside the people telling them.
Alongside them.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
But it wasn't always smooth sailing for This American Life.
Oh, no, not at all.
You know, in the beginning,
Especially in the beginning.
they had their fair share of critics.
Oh, yeah.
Some people
Yeah, they thought it was
found it too quirky,
too quirky.
too meandering,
Too meandering.
you know?
It was a new kind of radio. And
Yeah.
it took a while for people to catch on,
That's true.
you know?
Yeah.
But as they honed their craft,
Uh-huh.
they started attracting this loyal following. And then came the late 1990s and early 2000s.
Okay.
What many consider like the golden age of This American Life.
The Golden Age.
Golden age.
This is when they really solidified their style.
Yes.
And produced some of their most iconic episodes.
Some of the most iconic episodes.
Fiasco from 1997 is like a perfect example.
Fiasco. Oh, yeah.
It starts with this like hilarious story about
I love that episode.
a community theater production of Peter Pan
Yes.
that goes hilariously wrong.
Hilariously wrong.
And then it like shifts gears to explore more serious fiascos.
Right.
You know,
It shows their range.
it really shows their ability to balance like humor and pathos,
It does. Humor and pathos, yeah.
which is like not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
And then there's The House on Loon Lake from 2000.
The House on Loon Lake.
This eerie atmospheric story
It's just eerie.
about a guy who finds this abandoned house in the woods.
Yes.
And it unfolds like a mystery.
Like a mystery.
It leaves you feeling unsettled.
It does.
Like wondering what really happened in that house.
You're just left with so many questions.
Both of those episodes, I think, are classics.
They are.
And I think they'd be great starting points for our listeners
Oh, yeah.
who maybe haven't delved too deep into this American Life archives,
Right.
you know, fiasco, for a good laugh.
For a good laugh.
And The House on Loon Lake for something a bit more
It's a
haunting.
bit more haunting, yeah.
And this era also saw the emergence of some like big name contributors like David Sedaris.
Oh, David Sedaris.
Remember his story about working as a Macy's elf?
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
It's like classic Sedaris, dry wit,
Classic Sedaris.
hilarious observations.
Yes, yes.
And then Sarah Vowell brought her unique blend of like history
Foul.
and personal narrative to the show.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
her episode Trail of Tear,
Tears, uh-huh.
where she retraces the forced relocation of Native Americans.
Right.
It's both like informative
It is.
and deeply moving.
It is very moving.
They were assembling this like really talented team
They were.
of producers,
Yeah.
each with their own strengths,
Huh.
you know, making the show even more like diverse and engaging.
More diverse and engaging.
It's amazing to think how far they'd come from those early days in Chicago.
It is.
And then came the podcast revolution, which completely changed the game for This American Life.
Oh, the podcast revolution.
Well, we'll get into that in a bit.
Right.
We'll take a quick break and come back to that.
Sounds good. It's funny how some of those early episodes, you know, the ones that were like hits on the radio,
Yeah.
became even bigger once This American Life hit the podcasting scene.
Yeah, it's like they were ahead of their time in a way.
They were.
So they embraced podcasting in 2006,
2006. Yeah.
right at the start of the podcasting boom.
The very beginning.
Like, what do you think made them so quick to jump on this new platform?
Well, I think Ira Glass has always been interested in pushing boundaries.
Okay.
Experimenting with new ways to tell stories. And I think they saw the potential of podcasting to reach a wider audience.
Yeah.
An audience that maybe wasn't tuning into public radio.
Okay.
Remember, this was like before smartphones and streaming services.
Right.
Podcasting was still this new, exciting frontier.
A wild west of audio.
Exactly.
And it was a smart move. Like their listenership exploded.
It did.
They were one of the first major shows to offer free downloads.
That's right.
And I think people were just hungry for this kind of in-depth storytelling.
I think so, too.
Did the move to podcasting change their approach to storytelling in any way?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Episodes started to get a bit longer.
Yeah.
And they began experimenting with more serialized storytelling.
Okay.
Like the 2-part series, Harper High School from 2013.
That series was a real turning point, wasn't it?
It was a powerful series.
Took listeners inside a Chicago high school that had been devastated by gun violence.
Right.
They followed the students and staff over an entire year. A year march by 29 shootings.
It was a tough listen.
It was raw, unflinching, and incredibly powerful.
It showed that This American Life wasn't afraid to tackle these tough, complex issues.
Right.
You know, they were willing to go beyond those quirky feel-good stories.
Yeah.
And delve into, like, the darker side of American life.
They won another Peabody Award for that series, right?
They did, yeah.
It really cemented their reputation as one of the most important voices in audio journalism.
Absolutely.
Speaking of groundbreaking storytelling, we can't forget about Serial.
Oh, Serial.
The spin-off podcast hosted by Sarah Koenig.
Right.
That first season, which investigated the murder of Hae Min Lee, became a global phenomenon.
It did. Everybody was talking about it.
I remember exactly where I was
when
I listened to that first season.
It was water cooler talk for months.
It was.
Serial was a game changer.
Yeah.
It was one of the first true crime podcasts to achieve mainstream success.
Right.
And it had everyone hooked.
It's a testament to that narrative style.
It is.
That This American Life helped pioneer.
Right.
Like that slow burn.
Yeah.
The attention to detail. The emotional weight of the story.
The emotional weight.
Even though it was like a separate entity.
Oh, yeah.
You can definitely hear that this American Life DNA.
Yeah.
And Serial.
Oh, absolutely. The in-depth reporting, the ethical considerations, the way they build suspense and keep you guessing until the very end.
Totally.
It's all there.
But success doesn't come without its challenges, right?
That's true.
As This American Life's influence grew, they also faced some controversies.
They did.
The Mr. Daisy and the Apple Factory episode in 2012
Oh, yeah.
caused quite a stir.
It did.
It was adapted from Mike Daisy's one-man show.
Right.
About the working conditions at Apple factories in China.
Yeah.
The episode was a hit.
It was a huge hit.
But then it came out that parts of Daisy's account were fabricated.
Oh, right.
That must have been a huge blow to their credibility.
It was.
How did they handle the fallout from that?
Well, they didn't try to hide it. In fact, they dedicated an entire episode to retracting the story.
Wow.
And Ira Glass even confronted Daisy on air.
Oh, wow.
It was a risky move.
Yeah.
But it ultimately showed their commitment to journalistic integrity.
Right.
You know, they were willing to own their mistakes and be transparent with their listeners.
It's refreshing to see a show that's willing to hold itself accountable.
It is.
Especially in an era where it's so easy to spread misinformation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Daisy incident wasn't the only criticism they faced.
Right.
Some people started to feel like This American Life, with its focus on personal narratives, was becoming a bit dated.
Okay.
A bit out of touch with a world that was increasingly polarized and politically charged.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
The media landscape was changing rapidly, and This American Life had to adapt.
So how did they respond to this criticism?
Well,
did they make any changes to their format or content?
They did. They made a conscious effort to diversify their stories.
Okay.
And the voices that they featured.
Right.
Episodes like 129 Cars.
Right.
About a struggling car dealership and a changing economy.
Right.
And the problem we all live with, a powerful 2-part series on school segregation, showed like a more serious investigative side to This American Life.
It seems like they were trying to strike a balance.
I think so, yeah.
Between their signature style, you know, those personal, often quirky stories,
right,
and a more hard-hitting approach to current events.
Right.
Did this shift alienate any of their longtime listeners?
I think there were definitely some growing pains. Some listeners felt like the show was losing its charm, its unique voice.
Right.
But I think most people appreciated the effort to stay relevant.
Yeah.
To engage with the issues of the day.
And they continued to experiment with new formats and approaches.
They did.
In 2017, they made the bold decision to leave Public Radio International and go independent.
They did. They went independent.
That was a big move.
It was a huge move.
What prompted that decision?
I think they wanted more creative freedom.
Okay.
More control over their content and their finances.
Makes sense.
And it paid off.
It did.
By 2020, they were bringing in over $7 million a year.
Wow.
Mostly from podcast ads and listener donations.
Wow.
They had built this loyal audience that was willing to support them, even without the backing of a major network.
That's a testament to their storytelling.
It is.
Their ability to connect with people on a personal level.
Yeah, people really connect with them.
It's interesting to think about how This American Life has evolved over the years.
It has been quite a journey.
From those early days on WBEZ to this independent media powerhouse.
It's amazing.
But what about the heart and soul of the show?
Ira Glass.
Ira Glass.
Yeah.
He's been there from the beginning.
He has.
He's become synonymous with This American Life.
Yes.
That voice.
That voice.
That distinctive, slightly nasal voice.
Yeah.
Is instantly recognizable.
Instantly recognizable.
And his persona. That self-aware humor and earnestness is a big part of the show's appeal.
It is. It is.
He's a master storyteller.
He is.
But he's also kind of a polarizing figure.
Yeah, he is.
Some people find his voice grating.
I could see that.
His style a bit too precious.
Right.
What do you think it is about Ira Glass that makes him such a divisive figure?
Well, I think it's his vulnerability.
Okay.
He's not afraid to be himself, flaws and all.
Right.
He's willing to admit when he's wrong, to poke fun at himself.
Yeah.
And that can be off-putting to some people. They want their authority figures to be perfect, infallible.
Yeah.
But I think his authenticity is what makes him so relatable.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's like that friend who's always telling you these amazing stories. But he's also kind of awkward and self-deprecating.
Yeah.
You can't help but love him.
And he's still so passionate about storytelling.
He is.
You can just hear it in his voice. Even after all these years.
After all these years.
He's still deeply involved in the show.
He is.
Editing scripts. Fine-tuning sound mixes.
Yeah.
And hosting most episodes.
Right.
He's said that he'll keep going.
Yeah.
As long as he has something to say.
As long as he has something to say.
As long as he feels like he's still learning and growing.
That's great.
But he's not the only one shaping the future of This American Life.
No, not at all.
They have cultivated this whole generation of talented producers.
They have.
Julie Snyder, Alex Bloomberg, Sarah Koenig, and so many others.
So many others.
It's like they've created this storytelling dynasty.
They have, yeah.
What do you think is the most enduring legacy of This American Life?
I think This American Life has helped us to appreciate the power of personal narratives. To see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Yeah.
It's taught us to listen more deeply, to be more empathetic.
Right.
And to recognize that everyone has a story to tell.
I love that.
And it's paved the way for a whole new generation of podcasts and audio storytelling.
It really has.
Yeah.
It really is amazing to think about the ripple effect This American Life has had on the world of audio storytelling.
It's huge.
Like, look at the explosion of all these narrative-driven podcasts out there now.
So many.
Shows like Radiolab, The Moth, Invisibilia.
Yeah.
I mean, they all owe like a huge debt to This American Life.
I think so, yeah.
For kind of paving the way.
Totally.
It's true. This American Life didn't just create a show. They created like a whole genre.
Yes, it did.
They showed the world that you could tell these compelling and nuanced stories.
Right.
Using only sound.
Only sound.
And they inspired this whole generation of producers to experiment with new ways of using audio to connect with audiences.
It's pretty remarkable.
And their influence extends beyond podcasting too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, they had that short-lived TV series on Showtime.
They did.
And you can see their DNA in shows like Modern Love, which takes these personal essays and turns them into these beautifully crafted short films.
Right. I see what you mean.
Exactly. This American Life has changed the way we think about storytelling.
It has.
Across all mediums,
It really has.
They've shown us that the most powerful stories are often the ones that are closest to home. The ones that explore the complexities of human relationships.
Right.
And the challenges of everyday life.
The everyday life.
And they do it with such empathy and humor.
They do.
You know, even when they're dealing with these difficult subjects, there's always this like underlying sense of hope.
Yeah.
This belief in the resilience of the human spirit.
I agree.
But, you know, like any long-running show.
Yeah.
This American Life hasn't been immune to criticism.
Of course not.
Some argue that their focus on personal narratives can sometimes feel a bit insular, too focused on the experiences of a certain demographic.
I can see that.
Others say that their pace, that slow burn, reflective style, can feel kind of out of step with today's fast-paced, bite-sized media landscape.
Right. Everything's so quick these days.
It's almost like a form of resistance, isn't it?
Yeah.
To slow down. To really listen.
Yeah.
To engage with a story on a deeper level.
It takes effort.
Do you think there's still a place for this kind of slow storytelling?
I do.
In our increasingly frenetic world?
I think it's more important now than ever.
Okay.
You know, we're constantly bombarded with information, noise, everything's so loud and fast.
Yeah.
And I think we're all craving something more substantial.
Right.
Something that will make us think, feel, and connect with each other.
Connect, right.
On a deeper level.
And This American Life provides that.
They do, yeah.
It's a space where you can step away from the chaos of the world.
Yeah, it's like an escape.
And immerse yourself in a story.
Right.
In someone else's experience.
In someone else's shoes.
And despite the criticisms, they're still going strong.
They are, yeah.
They just celebrated their 900th episode. And they still draw millions of listeners every week.
That's incredible.
It's amazing they've managed to stay relevant.
They have.
Adapt to the changing media landscape. While remaining true to their core values.
It's a tough balance to strike.
They're still innovating, experimenting with new formats.
Oh, yeah.
Like live events and interactive apps.
That's cool.
And they're not afraid to tackle complex issues like climate change, racial justice.
Yeah.
The challenges of living in a digital age.
They're not shying away from the tough stuff.
They're constantly pushing themselves to find new ways to tell stories that matter.
It shows.
Stories that will resonate with audiences and make them think differently about the world.
Yeah, they're always pushing the boundaries.
Now, what about Ira Glass?
What about him?
He's 65 now.
Is he really?
Any signs of slowing down?
I don't know. He's hinted at retirement.
Okay.
But he's also said that he'll keep going as long as he has something to say.
Right.
I think he's still energized by the work.
Yeah.
By the challenge of finding new stories and new ways to tell them.
It's hard to imagine This American Life without him.
It is, yeah.
But it's also exciting to think about what the future holds for the show.
Right. Who knows what they'll come up with next?
Maybe there will be a new host, a shift to video.
Could be.
Or a return to their more experimental roots.
That's exciting to think about.
Whatever happens, This American Life has left this indelible mark on the world of storytelling.
They have, for sure.
They've shown us that everyone has a story to tell. And that the most ordinary lives could be filled with extraordinary moments.
It's true.
And they've reminded us that the best stories are the ones that connect us, that make us feel less alone in the world.
I think that's a great takeaway.
So if you're looking for a show that will make you laugh, cry, think, and maybe even change the way you see the world, I highly recommend checking out This American Life.
I second that.
Start with Fiasco for a taste of their signature blend of humor and pathos.
Oh, yeah, good one.
Or dive into the House on Loon Lake for a haunting mystery.
Okay.
And if you want to understand the roots of the modern podcasting boom, definitely give Harper High School a listen.
Good episode.
And as you're listening, think about how This American Life has reflected the changing landscape of America over the past 30 years.
It's a good question.
It's a question worth pondering.
It is.
And it's one that only This American Life,
right,
with its unique brand of storytelling, can truly explore.
Absolutely.
Happy listening.
Happy listening.